Well, welcome back everybody to another episode of Commissioner's Corner. I am County Commissioner Josh Brown. I'm here with Char Burnett from BCAT.
Welcome back to the studio, Commissioner.
Glad to be here. Thanks for joining me.
I have some questions that we're going to talk about that we have brainstormed together, and also some topics that I was interested in. And the first one is going to be, how did the 2010 budget end up? How's the county looking at the end of 2010?
Well, we finished 2010 very strong. When we adopted our 2010 budget at the end of 2009, because the county every December has to adopt our budget for the following year.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different process than what the state does. Remember, the state legislature meets in the beginning of the year. That's when they go through the process of adopting a biennium budget. So the county commissioners and all local governments have to adopt their budgets at the end of the year for the following year. And we worked very diligently to manage the county's finances throughout 2010. When we originally adopted our 2010 budget, it was a balanced budget without depending upon reserves. So what that means is the county has to always have a balanced budget like the state does,
Mm-hmm.
but when we were in the recession, in the depths of it, local governments have the ability to dip into reserves to balance their budget during the year. We felt very strongly with where our county reserves were at that we couldn't reduce reserves any further. So we were committed to keep that budget balanced throughout 2010 and working with our separately elected officials, the county sheriff, prosecutor, among others, and our internal departments that report to the Board of Commissioners. We really focus on managing the budget, and the really terrific news is that our goal was to have at least a balanced budget without dipping into reserves. And the latest numbers that we're looking at, because it takes us several weeks after the fiscal year ends to be
Sure.
able to make sure that all the grant dollars come in and the revenues are exactly what we expected and expenditures are where they're at. So we're just wrapping up that reconciliation process, but it looks like we'll be able to actually add to our reserves to the tune of
Great.
about $2 million.
Wow.
So put that put that a little bit in perspective. When we started 2010, our reserves were right around $5 million. We think we'll be able to start 2011 with about $7 million in reserves, which is a pretty significant achievement. There aren't
Mm-hmm.
many cities or counties that have
Mhm.
actually increased reserves in a year like 2010, but we've been able to do that in Kitsap County.
Mhm.
And then looking forward for our 2011 budget, when we adopted this budget, our goal was to be able to add $1 million of funds to reserves additionally. So our hope is that as we work through this year, we're staying on top of our expenditures, making sure we're tracking revenues, which to start this year, some key indicators like sales taxes are actually slightly above what our budgeted estimates were. That's the first time that sales taxes have come in slightly higher since 2007. So
Really?
yeah, so this is, we really feel that we've hit the bottom, and although unemployment and other factors aren't recovering as fast as I think we would all like, we at least feel that we are in a position where revenues aren't further deteriorating.
Mhm.
So, but bottom line is our goal is to add another $1 million at least to reserves this year,
Wow.
so that we could finish 2011 and start 2012 with about $8 million in reserves. So we could go in a 2-year period from being at $5 million in reserves to having increased that by a pretty significant amount to $8 million, and which that's a 60% increase.
Mhm.
So that's what we're focused on doing.
But here goes the gas crisis that we're experiencing as
Right.
we record this program, and gas is literally going up every day. Sometimes twice a day they change the numbers on the gas tank. And I know that will affect big departments like Public Works, Sheriff, folks that drive constantly, especially Sheriff's Department, around the clock those vehicles are on the road. So I bet in the next few months there might be some conversation about budget adjustments regarding fuel usage and
Yeah, we're looking at everything, and I think anybody will tell you, if you manage a complex organization, whether it's a county or a city government or Boeing or Microsoft,
Mhm.
the day you adopt the budget, you know that the next day things are not
Things
going
are-
to be
you're
exactly what you
right.
predicted. But,
You're right.
But that's why you have to manage it throughout the year.
Mhm.
And when I became county commissioner, we started a process of having regular briefings for the board from our budget staff, so that every
Excellent.
month when we get the sales tax projections that come in, when we receive twice a year our property tax payments from a majority of property owners in Kitsap County, we are working as a team to make sure that we're tracking those revenues. And then for a lot of our county departments, our sheriff's department is a good example. We have various contracts in the county jail with
Mhm.
with the Department of Corrections, with other local governments to house inmates in our county jail facility.
Mhm.
That brings in revenue.
Right.
But those entities, whether it's a state or other local governments, are looking at how they reduce their expenditures, which means
Mhm.
it could have a revenue impact to Kitsap County. So all these things are in flux. As the state is working through closing their multi-billion-dollar budget deficit down in Olympia, that will have ripple effects on Kitsap County and on all local governments. So we're really trying to stay on top of all these issues and just manage throughout the year. And as I said, last year, there were, between the number of foreclosures, the fact that sales taxes were flat, other revenues that disappeared, we had a lot of factors to manage through 2010. And we did so very successfully. And we did so in collaboration with all of our departments, and a collaboration between the Board of County Commissioners and our separately elected officials. We were able to add $2 million in reserves. So these are the things that we're really focused on getting right. And at the end of the day, for the county commissioners, the most important responsibility that we have is managing the county's finances. And between our general fund budget, county's debt policy, other things that we're doing as a board, I really believe that over the last 5 years, we've made significant improvements in terms of how this very complicated $300 million public corporation is being managed. And increasing reserves when you're still not quite out of the recession. The fact that last year when the county was upgrading our central Kitsap treatment plant, and we were approving approximately $40 million in bonds to do that work, we actually had our bond rating as a county upgraded. So that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because you have policies in place, and the commissioners working with our key staff, working with, in this case, the treasurer and the auditor who are on our county finance team. We're very methodical about putting policies in place and making decisions that would mean that the county's bond rating would increase, would be upgraded from a A+ rating to a AA- minus rating. And what that means is when we're going out for $40 million in debt, we're probably going to be able to save 0.5% of interest.
Exactly.
And if you look at refinancing your home, 0.5% or 0.75% on a 30-year mortgage means a lot. It means a lot of savings to the taxpayers and ratepayers in Kitsap County when we're issuing debt for critical projects like our largest central Kitsap treatment plant. So.
Well, Josh, there's going to be some changes in the county administration. First of all, we'll have a new North End commissioner and also a new county or changes in county administration. Let's talk about both of those topics. First of all, Commissioner Bauer served us so well, and filling that position, big decision for you and Commissioner Garrido.
That's correct. So, I'm getting to be an old pro at this. This is the 5th appointment that I've been a part of in 5 years as
kidding.
commissioner. Yes.
No
So
kidding.
4 of them have been partisan. We've made an appointment for our North Kitsap commissioner twice now. First, we appointed Commissioner Bauer, and at the time of the taping of this episode, we're going to be completing the process in a couple days of appointing our new North Kitsap commissioner. We have 3 finalists who are all excellent, and I think would all serve our community very well. And it's going to be a tough choice for Commissioner Garrido and I to make a decision here in a few days, but we look forward to that. And then we also, I was part of a process to appoint an auditor, a treasurer, and also a district court judge. So
Right.
5
Wow.
5 appointments in 5 years, and this happens to be the 5th county commissioner that I've worked with in 5 years. So, you know, I try not to take it personally
You're getting to be
that everyone's leaving.
you're senior commissioner.
Yeah, I've been for a little while, you know, but people keep leaving me, but I try not to take it personally. So, but you know, I think the real lesson that I've learned is that, and knowing counties throughout Washington State, you know, I have friends in big urban counties like King and Pierce and Snohomish, and friends in counties like Skamania, which has less than 10,000 people.
Right.
And most of their property is federal land that's off the tax roll. So, you know, our counties in Washington are very diverse, but I think the thing that has been a common thread that's united us is the fact that we have to deal with significant change. And you have turnover from your elected officials. And since I was first elected and took office in 2007, not only have I worked with what will be 5 county commissioners, but all the mayors that were elected when I first took office are no longer mayor of our 4 cities. In fact, Bainbridge decided to get rid of the formal position of mayor. So these are a lot of changes. And what I think you have to do in local government is to have systems in place to manage your organization so that, you know, whether it's Commissioner Bauer or myself or whomever serves as commissioner, you're going to have the changes on the board, but you need to have the systems in place to manage the organization so that the public gets the services that they rely upon, so that there aren't disruptions in the county government when you have changes in the elected officials. And what that means is that, number one, we have to have the right people working at the county, and it's really critical that in our senior management positions, whether it's our county administrator or our directors or you know, our division level managers, that we have the right people managing these divisions and departments. And we have 1,200 employees at the county, and you know, as I said earlier, about a $300 million annual budget. So this is a pretty complicated organization to manage. So what I'm advocating for with, and I really believe, and you know, no offense to Steve, I think Steve would say the same thing, Commissioner Bauer, is that really the big loss is our county administrator, who's taken a position over in King County. So what I want us to be able to do is, instead of just rehiring or hiring a county administrator to fill that vacancy, we've had the same model of county government, having a county administrator, having half a dozen directors now for about 11 years. I think it's time to look at the way we're organized and to figure out if there's some ways that, number one, we can break down silos. Number two, we can increase efficiencies. Number three, that we organize the county government so that we have an internal operations group that reports to the Board of County Commissioners that allows the commissioners to manage the really critical systems that our county government relies upon. Managing the county budget, how we put the budget together, how we monitor it during the year, how we put financial controls in place, how we measure performance from all of our departments. Number two, having clear labor policy in place that, number one, allows the county to attract and retain quality employees, but is implementing labor policies that, number one, the county government can afford, and that look at how we're compensating our county employees and compensating our county employees you know, at a rate that makes sense for the local job market, and that pass muster with our local residents, you know, who are at the end of the day paying the salaries of our county employees. Number three, we really need to get our arms around how annexations and potential incorporations can impact and will change the county. We've seen more annexations in the past few years than the county government has seen in a long time. We're going to see more. We have a group, you know, right now working on incorporating Silverdale.
That's right.
Down the road, you may have a group that wants to incorporate Kingston. We have more people living in our unincorporated urban growth areas than live in our 4 cities. So the county government will, over time, and it might take 20 years to eventually get there, but we're going to do less work in our urban areas And we're
Right.
going to become more and more a regional service provider,
Mm-hmm.
providing services to all county residents for things like prosecuting felonies or running the court system or running elections,
Mm-hmm.
and then providing truly rural levels of services in places like Olalla, Seabeck, Hansville, Suquamish.
Mm-hmm.
And how we manage around those changes is really critical.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to, I think you can have a situation where you have changes, you have people leave, and you can let that paralyze your decision making. But I actually believe that with the changes in our North Kitsap Commissioner, the fact that our county administrator has chosen to move on to a position that makes more sense for her, I think this is a really exciting opportunity to look at how we've been doing business the last decade and figure out how do we need to do business moving forward to put the systems in place and to manage the county government in a fiscally responsible manner and putting processes in place that really make the county government as effective and efficient as we have the potential to become.
Mm-hmm. So Josh, the follow-up question would be, I heard you say that the commissioners then would be responsible for departments,
Right.
and that's a lot of work when you're already trying to manage everybody's work under the departments. So is it really going to be, I don't want to say smart, but should the county commissioners really be managing departments? And that's, I think that was what the county administrator's job was.
Sure.
To run the day-to-day of the county, report to the commissioners. So I think that's a pretty critical position.
Right.
So looking at maybe making some changes puts more work on the three of you.
Yeah. Well, here's how I would, I guess, look at that. Before the county administrator position was created, you had several directors that reported directly to the Board of Commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And those directors' responsibilities were to manage those departments. Public Works,
Perfect.
Parks,
Mhm.
Department of Community Development,
Mm-hmm.
Administrative Services, which includes our, essentially our budget office and other critical core functions. Information Services,
Mm-hmm.
managing the county's technology infrastructure, and finally Personnel and Human Services.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the 6 departments that have essentially been in place prior to having a county administrator and over the last 11 years that we've had a county administrator.
Mhm.
And what I'm suggesting is not having a situation where you have 3 county commissioners managing the departments or micromanaging the departments directly. I don't think that works.
Mm-hmm.
But the county commissioners have a legislative role, we have an administrative role. And the administrative role that we have requires that we appoint people in these various departments that are reporting to the board for, to receive policy direction and then implementing that policy direction. And what I don't think works any longer is having one county administrator have to manage a half a dozen departments that range as wildly as they currently do.
Mm-hmm.
To expect
Okay.
our county administrator to manage public works and planning and the budget and personnel and human services, I think it is just too much for one person to do.
Okay,
So
now I understand.
what I'm interested in doing is taking those half a dozen departments
Got it.
and looking at the departments. In my mind, I think one potential option for restructuring would be to take the departments and to take the functions that are critical to putting systems in place to manage the overall county government. So those would be things like information services. We need a technology department that ensures that that core infrastructure is up and running for the county government.
Mm-hmm.
The budget functions. We need systems in place for departments that report to the commissioners or outside departments. Labor policy and personnel. These are things that are core policies that the county commissioners have the authority to manage. And I think what will make sense, instead of having a half dozen departments, is to take maybe a couple of those departments, like information services, administrative services, part of, split up personnel and human services potentially, so we have the personnel department, and take those 2.5 departments and say, this is our internal operations division. And instead of having a county administrator having to manage a half a dozen, maybe we would hire one
Got it.
chief or one director, or maybe we call it a county administrator, or head of the internal operations division, whatever the title is. Their job is to manage those systems. And then the rest of the departments that the commissioners manage, public works, parks, planning, human services, what those divisions and departments have in common is the fact that they're providing direct services to the public. And that's very different than managing the internal operations of the county. So what I'd like to see us do is see how we could combine internal operations into one working group and look at, there's various models on how we manage those direct services to the public, like parks and human services and public works. And King County has an interesting model where they put solid waste and sewer and parks and natural resources and Washington State Extension all in one group. But I'm not wedded to one model or the other. But I think breaking it up in that matter will allow us to have a much more coherent policy. And I think we'll make the Board of Commissioners more effective in making policy decisions. And I think it'll allow our staff to break down a lot of these silos to implement those policies, which we need to ensure that that we do effectively. So that's what I'm envisioning.
Good.
And of course, all this is up to the board to discuss.
Exactly.
And I could be the only commissioner that wants to break the mold and see how we scramble a few eggs here to make an omelet. But I think this is a time to
Good idea.
look at these issues.
Great ideas. Well, let's talk about some grant funding. The traffic safety grant that the county has received, going to make our roads safer for not only vehicles, but the county roads department and public works that maintain these roads. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm really proud of our public works department. They, we have a group that is so focused on maintaining our infrastructure, ensuring that we're doing everything we can to make our county roads safe. We're constantly looking at how we put better policies in place to deal with winter driving. A couple years ago, we started putting a salt brine compound on the roads that has significantly reduced black ice throughout the county. In fact, I'll talk to a lot of my constituents out in Crosby and Seebeck, and I always ask them when we've had a cold spell, have you seen any black ice? And I never get reports of black ice anymore. We're just drastically different than 2007 and prior years before we put that policy in place. But our group in Public Works, they're always looking at ways to be competitive for grants, and we received a grant for, I think, close to $2 million, which will allow us to do various improvements throughout the county for public for vehicular safety. So a couple of the things we're doing, just briefly, adding guardrails in locations throughout the county. The number one reason for fatalities on county roads are what we refer to as runaway or runoff accidents, where somebody drives off a county road and they go down into a ditch or someplace pretty dangerous. And if you look at a lot of the accidents on county roads where someone loses their life, it's those type of accidents. It's not a head-on collision, which you get more so in cities and in urban areas. So that will be good. Number two, we've been investing in recessed road buttons throughout the county. So, a lot of people are used to the buttons that are above the road, which are round. Those are terrific. But the problem is when our road crews are out sanding or we're plowing, those buttons pop off, or we can't use the same type of plows on those roads. We have to actually use a plow with a rubber face to it instead of the metal plows, which are much more effective at clearing ice. So having the recessed buttons will allow us to have clear markings that are permanent, at the same time allow us to do a much better job of maintaining our roads in the wintertime. The third thing, which I'm a big fan of, is the fact that we have a lot of speeding throughout the county. I won't name anyone,
I never do that.
But we can't have sheriff's deputies in every corner of the county. And our traffic division in the sheriff's office works really hard to try to police areas where you have speeding, but they just can't be everywhere. It's just not realistic. So one of the things we've tried to do, because I think voluntary compliance is what our goal is. We don't want to have to just write tickets. We want to be able to have safe road conditions for neighborhoods. Is we've installed, right now I think we have 3 or 4 radar speed signs that we put up randomly throughout the county, and we'll move those locations. So right now there's one on Anderson Hill Road where I live. And when you come down Anderson Hill Road, it's 35, and I tell you there's a lot of people that are going 45 and higher. That, starts blasting how fast you're going and tells you to slow down and gets people's attention. And
Yes, it does.
if we keep it in one location, what we see is that people will eventually just kind of ignore it. But we rotate them throughout the county, and they actually do help make drivers aware. Because I think most people want to be a safe driver.
Absolutely.
And it's just sometimes people are distracted, or they have their mind somewhere else, or they're rushing to work or rushing to pick up their kids. And it's just a good reminder. So we're buying 10 more to station throughout the county.
Great.
And I think that'll be a good program. So we're excited about that.
Excellent. Tell us about the new turf on Gordon Field. That will be a big hit.
Yeah, well, we have worked for the past several years to figure out how do we increase revenues to our county parks department, and how do we increase the opportunities for people to use our athletics facilities. And if you haven't noticed, we get a lot of rain in Western Washington.
Especially these past months.
And driving here, I noticed a couple of our fields at the fairgrounds that were absolutely flooded. Well,
lakes.
It's certainly the case that soccer is a sport you can play in pretty poor weather, but you can't play when the fields are absolutely muddy. So Gordon Field is our first turf field in the county, on county property, and on a county field. And by turfing the field with the artificial turf, what we're going to allow is the opportunity to play year-round instead of closing those fields, the field that we're turfing when the weather gets pretty tough. And at the same time, it's going to be able to bring in more revenue because of usage to the county parks department. So we're really excited about that.
Excellent. Josh, I'm going to let you close with some thoughts on the YMCA, and we're all really looking forward to that, and the opportunity that folks have to buy a brick there.
Right. Well, Shar, I wanted to thank you again for asking some great questions. June 1 is going to be the date that the YMCA in Silverdale opens. So it's hard to believe that.
5,000 members almost?
So far, yeah. 5,000 members have
That's
signed
awesome.
up, and it's kind of hard to believe that we're so close to the opening, just a couple months away. But they do have an opportunity for folks to buy bricks. So you can have your family's name or the name of a loved one in front of the new Y. They're working really hard to get members signed up. As you said, a few weeks ago they said that they had 5,000 members. So I know you're going to flash some information on
Their website?
on the website so that folks can find out how they can buy a brick and find out how they can get signed up. So we're pretty excited about that.
Great.
And just want to thank everybody for tuning in for an episode of Commissioner's Corner. And Shar, thank you again for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Commissioner. We're looking forward to going into the field next time the Commissioner's with us. We'll be out in this central Kitsap community. It'll be fun.